Dude, Keoni Watson, thank you for being here, buddy. I am so stoked. Thank you so much for being a part of this and, you know, part of the Passion Project.
Awesome. So, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's such a cool pleasure and an honor. Truly, super cool. And it's fun when I can have people that I know, but more so the people that I've looked up to for a long time or have known of, but really don't know the story. And we were talking a little bit about before. My goal today is just to connect the dots, and hopefully what we come up with is something that even people that you know really well or have known you will go, oh, I didn't know that about Keone. Yeah. So that's what we're going to do today.
You know what's funny is whenever we get on the phone or we're talking or we're texting, life gets in the way, work, you know, whatever. And I feel like we're always missing something. Like I'm always left wanting, like, oh shoot, I should have told them that. I should have told, but hey, here it is. You know, we got some time.
We have time. Is so cool. Yeah, just you and me. There's nobody, and we just turned off our phones, as we said, make sure that we get it all. Super cool for me. And here you are in California. So it just worked out really, really well that you're here from Hawaii, and we'll talk all about that. So today we're going to connect the dots. This is your life, Keoni Watson, and we're going to talk about where you started and how you ended up what you're doing today and all the cool stuff in between. And with you, like so many people I'm fortunate to have in here, like you've got an incredible story on so many different levels, both from life, from sport, from industry, family and friends. And I'm super stoked to uncover it because like most people, whatever sport you grow up in or whatever, you know, really turns you on in life, like I've watched, you know, for me, it grew up surfing. Well, you were one of those guys because we're close in age, but you were one of those names that I knew for a very long time before I got to know you a couple of years ago. For 30 years, you were an icon, and I'm not going to try to embarrass you, but like you were a known entity in the surfing and paddling world that I didn't know. You were just one of those guys on that list or in the videos or whatever. So it's super fun to be able to kind of dig deeper and understand more about how that all happened, because I always say, you know, elite performers leave clues, and it's always interesting to find how it works. So that's what we're going to do.
Well, I mean,
and I told you I wasn't going to embarrass you.
We already did.
But I'm gonna.
Well done.
A little bit. You know, and it's also when you are, I'm going to stop there, and I'm just going to do a quick introduction. So I've talked a little bit about you. I've already embarrassed you a little bit. But we've talked about what we're going to do today. But highlight, and again, it's me for a minute, and then we'll turn it over, and we'll just do Q&A, and we'll talk and have some fun. But you are, and you can poo-poo this and kind of like, aw shucks. But the reality is, you've been a professional surfer. You are a renowned big wave surfer. You have multiple craft performance at the elite level, which I watched personally a number of times.
I watched you. This far.
Yeah, well, we will clarify that. There's a big asterisk on that, which I will clarify. Big in the surf industry and have been for a very long time. I know you love to fish, just big waterman. But like, I would say maybe the thing I've learned the most, and I've read quotes that support this, you're the most humble, nicest, most approachable dude. You would never want that light shined on you for being what you've been. And I think that what makes you super special, in that you have like no ego about it. You want it to be super low pro while you are doing incredible things. So that might
I've gotten grumpy in my old age. Though.
Well, that happens to us, right? That happens. And at the same time, at our age, and I'm older than you, but like not a gray hair, like, dude, good man. Yeah. Well done. So listen, Keone, we're going to jump right in. And I think this is the way the day is going to go. And first I want to say this, I say it all the time. This is not a surfing podcast. It's not a paddling podcast. It's a storytelling podcast. But when you have people that is the bulk of their life, we're going to talk a fair bit about surfing and paddling and that world. But because it's such a cool story, I think anybody, whether you surf or paddle or not, are going to be super intrigued by this one.
Well, it's great. I mean, this is right in my wheelhouse. I mean, surf, paddle, ocean, community, like it's amazing. This is everything.
Hallelujah.
At this age.
Well, and you do all that stuff just at a level or 8 above me. So that's why it's super fun to do it. And we're going to talk growing up in Hawaii, what that was like in your family, because I truly know nothing. Surfing and how that formed you, paddling, and industry and life, and just go on through it. And we're going to go pretty chronologically.
Okay.
Ready to go?
Here we go.
Rad. Here we go. Okay. So you grew up in Hawaii, and you grew up. Well, I'm just going to stop there. I didn't grow up in Hawaii. most of us dreamed about it, thought about it, saw it in the magazines. What was it like growing up in Hawaii? Where'd you grow up? Start at the beginning.
First Hawaiian on the podcast?
First? No.
Maybe.
I had Emma McDonald and Collie Wilding.
Ah, that's right. Okay.
Anybody else?
Wilding, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, you probably know the Wildings, right?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So grew up in Makaha Beach. Like I tell people that all the time, and they look at me and they go, "No, you didn't." I go,
Right,
no,
because
true story.
Because you don't look like a Hawaiian, and
No.
and if you know of Hawaii as a toe-headed kid on the west side, there's a lot of story right there. I would imagine.
I mean, so real early backstory. My parents were in the Peace Corps, traveling back to Kansas, of all places. They stopped in Hawaii.
Back from where? Where were they?
They were in the Middle East, actually. Yeah, so they were in the Middle East, Iran. And they were on their way back to Kansas, stopped in Hawaii, drove out to Makaha Beach. And they were like, Makaha Beach or another winter in Atchison, and they needed teachers badly. And people were like, hey, it's a little rugged, teaching things not all it's cracked up to be. And my mom had just come back from Iran, and she's like, hey, bring it,
Were your parents already together?
Yes.
At the Peace Corps as a couple?
Yes, as a couple.
From Kansas?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they, pulled chocks and planted it there. So I'm lucky for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were married at the time?
They were married, yeah.
But no kids?
No kids, yeah. No
How
kids.
long after and how did they pick Makaha? Just because it was beautiful?
You know what? I don't know. I mean, I guess if you get to Oahu and drive to the end of the road, that's where you get to. And, I think, once you see Makaha Beach, it's hard not to fall in love with that place.
But the reputation of, and this would have been in the early 70s.
Yeah, early 70s.
So what was take your parents out of it. In the early 70s, what was Makaha on the west side of Oahu like?
For
Howleys.
Yeah, for Howleys. and it's funny, it's got that reputation, but, they grew, they taught there, really were in the community.
Okay,
as
so they were
teachers.
school teachers.
So they became teachers. So they drove out there, I imagine, figured this is amazing, realized that they needed teachers out there. And that's what they did. They were in the Peace Corps, and they're like, this is great, So they became teachers out there, and it's funny. My mom was at Waimea High School. My dad was at Nanakuli High School. So anyone who went to school on the west side of Oahu had one of my parents.
Wow.
So it was funny. I'd run into people all the time that I didn't know, but knew my folks.
Now, did they have a good reputation, or were they like tough enforcers? What?
Well, funny story. One of my protectors and my heroes and, one of my mentors was Rusty Kealana. And he was in Rusty, two-time world longboard champ and,
and the whole family is
from the Kealana.
Okay,
lineage.
yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about them.
So he was in my dad's class. And they had this amazing symbiotic, kind of relationship, where, my dad had Rusty in his class. Rusty saw me at the beach, and he goes, all right, I'm going to make sure this kid's protected, not going left into the reef, keeping his nose clean, staying where he needs to be.
How old's Rusty compared to you?
Rusty's a couple years older. Yeah, I think he's probably 55.
Got it.
56.
Old
maybe,
guy like me.
Like that. Yeah. Yeah, right. I'm right there. So that was an amazing relacion
And that happened. How old were you?
I was probably, so as I started going to the beach, I guess that timing, he was in my dad's class, and so it just kind of worked out where they kind of, figured out, oh, wait, that's your son, the blonde-haired kid? There wasn't many of us. He was like, oh, okay, I get it, so it was amazing. He, taught me so much. He's still one of my very best friends.
Well, that explains a lot, because the reputation for those of us that grew up here surfing and only learning about Hawaii at the time by the surf magazines, anything you read about the west side was super heavy.
Yeah.
And if you were a haole over there, like, watch out. Mm-hmm. But to use the word protector, you didn't say like friend, or like protector is the word you use. Like, that's incredible.
In and out of the water,
Yeah.
Yeah, in and out of the water, he was, had my back in every situation.
And that family, if they are in your court, you are safe.
So that's why I kind of had the red carpet. Russ K was a big part of that. Growing, his older brother Brian, was the protector of many, as a lifeguard, and then come later on, right? Developed life saving with a jet ski
Yep.
and a sled. And their father, Buffalo Keolana, was the first lifeguard on the on that side, on Makaha. So that was pretty amazing. Another person that I really was lucky to fall into was Rel's son. She got me my first surfboard, got me into the contest, her first Menehune contest, which still runs today, and she was a big part of my life. For
I mean, those 4 people you just mentioned, the Keolanas and Rel's son, are for a surf kid growing up here. Like, those were names in the magazines. Those were names. Like, the Keolana family is still incredibly well known, and Rel's son passed away 25 years ago?
About, jeez, yeah. Well,
but her
25.
name continues. You still hear her name spoken as like the Queen of Makaha, but like this incredible force.
Yeah,
maybe not force, influence and positive, like from what I understand, right? But you got to grow up with her.
Yeah. Rel would always bring me around whatever she was doing. She'd have something cooking. Hey, we're going. She did KCCN radio. She did Surf Report. She was a DJ, disc jockey.
Really?
Brought me in to do like Good Day Today, or I think it was USA Today. I don't know, one of the morning shows. Brought me along with her. Got me my first sponsor. Taught me how to dive. Taught me how to fish. It was amazing. I mean,
and you said it. You said it was in and out of the water. How much of Again, I'm way down the line, but because we're talking about it, excuse me, how much of who you are is a result of maybe those 4 people, and I'm sure there's many more, but out of the water, you've got a great reputation of being a really, really good, humble, nice guy. Mm-hmm. How much of that comes from them?
It was, obviously West Side, when I was away from the beach, maybe in some of the schools, it was a little sketch being the blonde-haired kid. It just, hazing was part of it. I was definitely different, but when I was at the beach, I had my community. I had my ohana, and I had these amazing figures in my life. So basically, that was a big part of who I became. Learning Aloha from Rel, like watching Rel work a room, watching Rel work a trade show, watching her work a beach, talk to tourists. She just had a moment for everybody. And that's something something I like to think that I take with me is like the way she shared Aloha. And she basically followed Duke's creed, and it was amazing, But growing up there, I think is made me who I am, obviously. I got to do some amazing things. I got to learn how to steer a canoe, which we'll probably talk about later. Mm-hmm. Got to learn how to fish, find taco from 30 feet up, down, with fishing with Rel. Learned how to surf Yokohama with Raske, learned how to do life saving with Brian Keolana, learned how to surf the point, learned the lineups from him. And then, the whole grew into relationships with the Downings later in life, because the Downings were, right there at Makaha, so learned the lineups from, Keone Downing, learned surfboard design from Keone, so pretty amazing place. Like Makaha didn't have the focus. It's not 50-yard line surf world like the North Shore is. A lot of my buddies grew up on the North Shore, and they're immediately, boom, they're like born onto the 50-yard line of the surf world, So I, would start my ventures out there a little bit later, but I think, just the amazing experiences I had early on in life out there on the West Side, I wouldn't trade for anything.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, again, I'm a little like you couldn't buy that experience. Yeah. You couldn't go, hey, I have all the money in the world, and I want to go spend time with Relson and the Keolanas and the Downings, and I want to learn to dive and fish and paddle from all, like, no money in the world would so. But my assumption is none of these people would have taken you in under their wings if you were a dick, if you were a punk, to a point.
Let me just set something straight. A 12-year-old blonde-haired kid does not be a dick on the West Side. You learn respect, and you learn your place in the order, very early, and it's funny, on the North Shore now, you don't really get that. Kids just automatically, they're shot into superstardom, and they're shot into, set waves at, the main waves, but in Makaha, as a towhead, you learn where you are very quickly. So,
well, I think in those, well, listen, again, everything I know is purely by what I'd read, what we'd heard, what we'd watched about the North Shore and the west side.
Yeah.
That was really the focus. South Shore is different, super fun, not nearly as controlled and regulated, and you're talking the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s. Like that was the peak of regulation and the black shorts and like there was a very much of an etiquette, and you had to earn. You just comment like you have to earn your way in, and it doesn't really exist anymore. But that was like the peak of it, as far as or darn close, right?
Growing up there, learning from an early age how everything works was, helpful. So I never really had any issues. I think the problem is when people come from another place, from an outside area, and they are already instilled and their froth level is here in Makaha, you need to be here. And you come in, and that's where the problems start. And I think it's like anywhere, but maybe, I think there's a little more regulation going on out there, but that's where most of the issues would be. And guys don't really get, what life is like out there and how to come in and assimilate,
Yeah, you have to, it takes time.
Yeah.
And yes. Okay. But again, growing up, that was all this, for us, I grew up here in the Newport, Costa Mesa area, surfing Newport. Like you kind of worked your way up the beach, and so you got a little bit of it, but etiquette was always something that you were taught, the easy way or the hard way. But where you grew up was what we just heard about. And the names that you're talking about, like these were all just, again, surf magazine stories is the way you grew up, which is really amazing. And for you, again, the Rel sons and the Downing families, and we won't go into it, but if anybody wants to learn more, like there's rich history lessons online you can find out about all these people. But Rel son and the Keolanas, all of them. And I'm sure there's plenty more, which is amazing. It's super neat. So you're growing up there, you're going to school, your parents are teachers at both the schools, and you're doing all the sports. Where do you go from there? Like, well, let's see this. Are you just surfing and paddling? Are you just ocean sports? Is the ocean your whole playground? Are you doing any land sports or anything else?
So my dad's a big basketball guy. He was the head coach of Nanakuli basketball high school for 20 some years.
Wow.
So I'm a big hoops junkie. Never played.
Oh,
much,
I've heard some stories. Yeah.
So what I was doing was I was across the street from the ocean, in the water, bodyboarding, surfboard. I think my first surfboard my dad found in the dumpster on one of his jogs. And then I think at some point they realized, oh, it looks like he's into this. So they got me a proper surfboard after that. But then a few of the guys at school, Dude Kaikuahivi, his father, Rona Kaikuahivi, ran Kamui Canoe Club. And so I kind of got locked into that, started steering. I was probably 10, 11, 12.
Okay.
And I
was steering which is pretty
12s.
Common in Hawaii to start paddling at an early age.
Right, it is. And
you said you started steering right out of the gate.
Yeah, smallest guy. Had a bit of water knowledge, so they put me in seat
So
6.
if you're we're talking 6-man outrigger canoes. If you're steering, that's the hardest. It's the most important. It's the quarterback.
Yeah.
Right? Or the point guard. I mean, you are kind of running the show, and you can't mess up. The one, right? So to be put in that position early on, it's a skill set that you learn that becomes very, very, very useful in paddling over the years, right? Forever.
And I think why I was put there was Joe Momoa, father of Aquaman.
Got it.
So Jason Momoa's dad, he was surfing at Makaha every day, saw me there, and when I showed up to paddle, they're like, oh no, we'll put this guy in seat 6. He's got a bit of a understanding of it, so put me back there. And funny enough, my mom still paddles. My dad still paddles with him. He raced the 70s the other day with Joe. But that's why I ended up back there. Steering, couple 2-3 seasons, I guess, and then what would happen is the surf contests were on the same weekend as a regatta. Saturday was the first round of the surf contest. Usually make it to the finals, which was Sunday, and so for a couple weekends, my dad did steer the race, boom, over to the surf contest, and then after a couple weekends of that, he goes, you got to pick one.
So it's like the kids here that are going from, they're doing soccer and baseball, and and the parents are like, oh, I can't do it. Like you're driving everywhere. But for you, it was paddling and surf.
Paddle surf, yeah.
It'll all tie together. When did surf contests start for you?
Well, Rel dragged me to her first event, kicking and screaming. I was probably 10 or 11.
Kicking and screaming, you didn't want to do it.
I didn't want to do it. And part of it was my equipment. I had, like board my dad probably found in the dumpster, right? And then I kind of hid, that one year. And then next year she goes, Keone, you're doing the contest. And she came to my house with one of her killer brand new Nectar twin fins. And she goes, here you go. No excuses now.
No excuses.
So I did it. I made the final, and then that was basically the catalyst that got me going.
And so that started. You said you were 10 or 11.
About 10 or 11 doing that, and then shortly after the canoe paddling, the races, and during that time, my dad, fit guy, he was an athlete, dropped me off at the canoe practice, and some of the guys were like, who's that Hurley guy over there? Where can I get that guy? So he got recruited, so he started paddling. And my mom was sore because me and my dad were gone all weekend, and my mom's from Kansas. She's not a water person at all, but my dad kind of joking like, why don't you paddle then? And she started, and sure enough,
neither of them have
stopped. Neither of them
None
stopped.
Of you have.
I mean, I don't know. I think my mom's done 10, 12 Molokai. My dad probably in the same neighborhood.
Incredible.
So they stayed on that course. I went hardcore surf only, so stopped paddling.
So you stopped paddling, you went
stopped
hardcore
paddling,
surf.
And then from 12, 13 on, I was just doing the surf contest.
And you're doing school and surf. And
during so my parents are both teachers out there. As things progressed, they kind of looked at, wow, this guy may not go the college route off the bat. There were some opportunities coming in. I had locked in with Quicksilver, and it looked like I may, surf after high school. So they said, well, let's get this guy while we have him. Let's kind of see what we can do and, focus his education as best we can. So they put me in a private school in Honolulu, Hawaii Baptist Academy. And I rode the bus every day, city bus, morning, late, evening. And that was a grind for sure. And some days I didn't get to surf because I would be home so late. I mean, catching a city bus into Honolulu from Makaha every day, that was kind of a grind. It's an hour and a half, each way. So it was tough. Yeah. Sometimes it was just weekends only. I'd get to get in the water.
Why do that? Because if it wasn't giving you more, it's like today they're all homeschooling.
Yes.
So, but if you're spending 3 hours a day on a bus, it's not giving you more surf time. It's giving you less.
Yeah, it's giving me a lot less surf time. But I think my parents had the end game. Like, hey, listen, let's just get this guy while we can. We'll get him as good of an education as we. They're educators, right? Yeah. So they were getting kind of worried about me not going the college route,
So
initially or ever.
Yeah.
So they
so
wanted
build
to
the best education in high school while you can, not knowing the outcome after because you're focused on surf.
Right. So they put me in this, private school in Honolulu.
How was that?
Which was great. It was good. It was amazing. Yeah, it was good. I didn't like it at the time, but now I look back on it and I think it opened some doors for me later, on the business end, having, that education and, people knowing. It's really funny in Hawaii, people say, hey, where'd you go to school? And you say your high school. Over here, it's like, hey, where'd you go to school? And you say college, right?
Right.
But your high school is everything.
You have your Punahou, you have your Baptist, and there's a couple others.
Yeah, Iolani, Mid-Pac, which,
And are those... So when I had Emma and Colleen here, one was Mid-Pac, one was Punahou.
Right.
Right, total rivalry.
Totally, yeah.
And then they went on to USC and UCLA, total rivalry. They're still best friends. I would imagine it's not dissimilar.
Hawaii Baptist is right there, from athletics, maybe not, one of the top couple, but from an academics point, HBA is pretty heavy, So I don't know how I got through that, but actually probably living with two educators helped for sure. But got through it. Dean's List, learned 4 years of Japanese, which was great, and that turned out to be helpful later on, in my
Can you still speak
career.
it?
Skoshi hanashimasu.
Dude, good for you. Wow.
So anyway, the school is good, and I was great though, because I had my roots in Makaha, went to elementary school there, got my base, so, that was great, where I had my community and my boys, but, high school, went out to private school.
Got it. Well, let's talk about your crew at that time. So you're surfing competitively in Hawaii during high school, living on the west side. But you're also going to school at the South Shore, and I'm sure you're going up to you're covering the whole gamut of surf, like most focused on surf in the world. Who become who's your crew at this time as you're an early teen or into your teenage years?
Yeah. So jousting with Ross Williams, Shane Dorian, Ronald Hill, Jason Magallanes, Matty Liu, that was kind of our crew,
If you surf or if you surfed in the 80s, 90s. Like these are all some pretty big. They're all the names.
They're the guys.
from Hawaii.
They're the momentum generation.
And then you add on some additional names through time.
So then through time and through national contest, and our crew kind of expands a little bit.
How does it expand? Add some of those names just for color.
So let's see. 1984 U.S. Championships was in Makaha.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Backyard.
So that was pretty amazing. We had everyone, it was amazing. It would go every year. It'd be a different venue. California, Florida, Texas, Hawaii. It kind of went every 4 years at that time. This year I think it's at now I think it's at Trestles.
And in '84 you would have been.
I was 12.
Yeah.
So I was 12. Then you start getting Strider Wasilewski. I got a photo of me and him. We didn't know who we were just standing there on the beach together, but, me and Strider became buddies that day. A lot of guys, and one, Kelly Slater.
Who's
Pretty
that?
amazing. Kelly Slater, amazing.
Yeah.
Just 11
11
time world
time,
champ. That's it. Yeah.
And just a caveat, jumping way ahead and we're going to come right back, but when Kelly won his last pipe contest in 2023,
yeah,
there's a million pictures.
2022. Yeah.
There's a million pictures of him on two guys' shoulders. Whose shoulders are those?
That's a funny story. Well, it was supposed to be me and Mark Cunningham, but Seth Moniz jumped in there and grabbed the other leg. We were watching, the final, and Mark and I were sitting there. We're in the Johnson backyard watching this final go down, and halfway through it, we look at each other and go, homie's going to win this thing. And we're like, yeah. So we're looking around like, you got champagne? I was like, I don't know. And we look over here in the cooler with the Florence camp. He lost, right?
Yeah.
And we go, they're not going to need that. It's like, boys, we're taxing your champagne. So me and Mark run down there, and I grab one leg. I look over and it's Seth, and I'm like, oh man, okay. Chairing's no picnic, especially in, soft sand, and you're running over photographers, and there's, red camera roadkill. You're stepping over people, and you're like, where's the stage? You went all the way up there. Oh my gosh. So anyway, that was fun.
Good job not dropping.
Yeah. But did meet him that day at Makaha, or that week, for the Nationals.
And you guys are like exactly the same age, right? Or darn close. He might be a year older than you.
He's just a skosh older.
Yeah.
But what was funny is in the semifinals, I saw, the heat. My dad drove down. He, again, not a big surf guy. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I'm in this semi, but it's over. I saw the guys in this heat. It's done. I'll be done here quickly. He's all right. He's all fine. We'll see you later. So I go out and I win the semi. And I was like, oh shoot, I'm going to be in the final. So I'm standing in there in the street, kind of hanging out afterwards with Kelly and his brother Sean and a few other guys, and they announced Kelly second and then me in first. And Sean goes, who beat you? And he points over at me, and at the time I had like this Franken surfboard, it was not the dumpster one, but it was a little better, but not much. And I had a pair of board shorts that my mom made.
Wow.
Like full homemade board shorts, and Sean looks over at me and he goes, him? And we talk about that all the time still, But anyway, he waxed us all in the final. He won. I think that was one of his first, national titles. But it was cool, so we've been buddies ever since.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Again, for those of us that didn't grow up in that world, like when you're going, it was me and Mark Cunningham. Mark was actually here in that chair with, on the Lifeguard Project films here too with Drosco. So he was interviewed right where you were just a couple weeks ago. Incredible.
What amazing.
Right,
Another
amazing
one of
guy.
my mentors that I met through Rel.
Wow.
And still to this day, he's just big influence in my life.
That's super cool. And then you're like, we took the champagne from John Florence's cooler, and I'm sitting there, it's really like for you, it happens a lot in this room because I'm very fortunate, the people that are here, but it's like very pedestrian. It's very like, that's just my world. I'm hanging out with all these people, and the rest of us are like, oh my God, did you hear Keone's stories? It's like everybody you can imagine. So it's super neat. So you go on, talk about continuing to compete at that age.
So competing, in the amateur circuit in Hawaii, and then every year do the national thing, in California.
Did you like to compete?
Yeah.
You have the eye of the tiger?
I do.
Like
I definitely have a competitive streak, and it was great, you know, and it was tough being where I was because we had a few people. You know, one of my guys I looked up to a lot, obviously, was Sonny Garcia. He lived out there, but he was, gosh, I think he was on tour at like 16. So I kind of lost that, you know, I lost that connection with him and being able to watch him. You know, he was a few years older. But yeah, I mean, I'd go mix it up on the North Shore with, you know, Ross and, you know, those guys. And I loved it. Yeah, I really loved competing.
Rad. So just a question on school and then we'll be done with it. Did you end up doing college at any time?
No,
Got it.
Not. Went to NSU. North Shore
University. Hallelujah. Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the North Shore University. What was that like?
So, you know, as I was saying, that dream did come true where I became a sponsored surfer for Quicksilver. And
is that because Kelly saw you wearing a pair of homemade board shorts after you waxed
guy
them?
up? It's crazy. Like, who is this guy? You know? No, funny. Actually, that came about through the Downings. And then, you know, one of my other mentors throughout my life, Danny Kwok, which I saw last year down here just randomly, you know. But Danny's funny. He's been like, I don't know, 2001 A Space Odyssey, you know, those monkeys have that monolith every so often. It kind of gives them like a projection and like some clarity in life. Danny's been that person, you know, where every now and again he'll just come into my life or we'll chat and he'll say something so profound that just changes the trajectory. But anyway, he gave me my first pro contract and started, you know, competing and surfing and was on the Quicksilver team. It was like a dream come true.
Rad.
It was amazing.
Well, just a funny Danny. I mean, again, growing up here, Danny Kwok grew up in Hawaii, but moved here, and then Quicksilver, visionary with Quick and Volcom, and we had an event at the Newport Aquatic Center right down the street here, and Danny and Bob Hurley were the two of the main guys, and so I got to interact with them a fair bit. But one of the things that Randy, my wife, and I bought at the auction was the big black and white picture of Danny when he was a kid skateboarding.
No way.
A Switchfoot. And he signed, and so it's up there, and I had a conversation. I'm like, oh, I got you on my wall. But I mean, growing up, he and then like Richard Wolcott and Pat Tenori, like so much of it happened right here.
Yeah.
So growing up here, watching, again, I was never at the level to be a part of, like, all we wanted to be was like a team rider. You know, I was never there. But I grew up watching it, and all my friends, like, we could play a name game all day long about guys that surfed at that level from here. So it's just fun. Like, I've been exposed to you and these people my whole life. I've just never been in that sphere.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm super aware of it.
It's cool. So much history here in Newport. And I spent a lot of time here, you know, as a sponsored surfer coming here, checking in with the crew on, was it Monrovia? I think that's where Quick was, you know, over there and going to visit Danny there and seeing Bob McKnight and, you know, seeing the crew there. But yeah, this was my check-in during the summers, and during the winter I was on the North Shore surfing and, you know, doing trips. How long did
you, well, let's talk about competitive surfing, how long you did it, what that was like for you and where that took you.
So, you know, so competing early on, you know, after high school, started getting into it, doing the contests and stuff, but my focus was North Shore season, you know, and it just kind of, I got the tap on the shoulder from Clyde Aikau when I was, I think, 18 or 19. He's like, "Welcome to the meet, bro." And I was like, "What?" And there in the mail came the invitation from the Eddie Aikau contest.
At 18 or 19 you got your invitation?
Yeah.
Okay, let's stop there for a second. So, A, I'm going to ask you just to share a little bit about the Eddie and Eddie's history, and then B, that doesn't happen without some big wave chops. So let's talk about the Eddie and who Eddie was, et cetera, real quick, and then talk about your background and how you got into big wave surfing.
Well, so as a towhead on the west side, I realized that I could get my share of waves at Makaha Point when it was big, because there wasn't a lot of guys out there. And so I realized, oh, that was my little piece. That was like my little time to get waves, you know. So I guess I got comfortable. And then obviously under the tutelage of, you know, Brian and Rusty, I was able to, you know, get comfort in, you know, some situations out there and learning it. And then started to go out to Waimea, and it was funny. The Makaha guys will, you know, have this thing with Waimea where, you know, Makaha's a, you know, long point and shoot kind of screamer, you know. Waimea's a heavy, crazy drop, but different waves, you know. So spent some time at Waimea, and then I guess, you know, was kind of pulled into that little crew, which was kind of probably seeing that invitation come in the mail was just amazing, you know. I mean, that was probably one of the highlights of my life, I think, you know, getting that initial invitation. But yeah, Eddie Aikau contest. celebrates the life of Eddie Aikau, waterman who lost his life when the Hokulea voyaging canoe capsized. He took his surfboard and went to go paddle to get help, and was never found again. But this contest goes on to commemorate the life of Eddie, and pretty amazing. I mean, that's a whole nother 5 podcasts. But
you and I never talked about it, but I got a chance to go on the Hokulea earlier this year.
No way.
I got to sail with it from Newport to Dana Point.
Really?
And there's the plaque right there on there with Eddie Aikau, and it was one of those chicken skin. Dude,
that's crazy.
I couldn't believe that I got that invitation, and it was just super powerful, and I was very... I don't know what the word. I was feeling the energy that whole day. Like it was really amazing. Again, growing up, hearing about it, hearing the stories, and getting that last minute call up to sail on it.
That's so cool.
It was amazing.
Wow, that's amazing. You had that experience.
I know.
Very few people have had that. So that's amazing.
Yeah, pinch myself on that one too. Okay, so we're back to big waves. So at 18, 19, like I didn't realize you were that young when you got that first invitation.
Yeah. It was. That was kind of my path, I think at the time, Danny with Quicksilver and the Quicksilver team, Danny Kwok said, "Hey Keone, listen, we've got, Kelly, Bryce Ellis, Ross Clark Jones, Jeff Booth. Quicksilver had a pretty amazing team, and he was like, do we need another guy fighting it out there? Like, hey, surf Triple Crown, surf, the Hawaii local contest, surf a couple PSAs, But really, I think what would bring value to us and would really solidify, your value to us is doing surf trips, and it's like, okay, cool, Danny.
So let's stop. Did you go, I really wanted to surf the world tour and travel all over and surf shitty waves, or I get to go surf big waves and world-class waves with great people on, like, were you kind of bummed or were you super stoked?
No, I was, there was a part of me, I got to scratch that itch during the Triple Crown,
the competitive
during the
itch.
Eddie, stay sharp for the Eddie, a few PSAAs here and there, so I got my fill of contests, and as you're younger, that's how you quantify yourself. Now you can there's little different ways to add value to your career, but, back then it was pretty much contests, But it was awesome where I was in the right place at the right time. Danny needed some, he said, hey, this is how we want to diversify our portfolio as a brand. And, got lucky. I mean, one of the highlights was going to film Surfers of Fortune with Kelly on the Indies Trader. One of the first guys that, I guess they call it HTs now, but Lance's Rights and Lance's Lefts and all that, Macaronis. I mean, that was
early in the awareness of that's the Mentawai Islands in Indo.
Yeah.
And that was early in that. Now it's pretty known. There's surf camps on all those beaches, but in the day, that was like off the beaten path, way.
That was, we showed up and there was nobody there.
Oh my gosh.
Nobody. And it was just amazing.
If you showed up there today, how many boats would be there and people?
Well, I don't know. And I haven't been back and I don't know if I want to see that. I just want to leave it how it was, And it was insane. I mean, we didn't have cell phones. We'd be on the boat and that was it. You're there for 3 weeks, and you were shooting and surfing and it was amazing. But we were right there. I think Martin Daly took the Rip Curl crew there. And they filmed
back in the search.
Filmed the search, and then I think we were right after them.
Wow.
I think he was still kind of sussing out, okay, where are the spots?
And who was on that boat? You mentioned Kelly. Who else?
Kelly, Ross Clark Jones, Matt Hoy, Brady Diaz, but the crew of photographers: Jeff Hornbaker, Brian Blake, and Don King. Like, can you imagine a better group of photographers, and water cinematographers? I mean, it was a dream trip. It was unbelievable.
What kind of coverage did you personally get from that trip?
Well, so the focus was to get a bank load of footage or imagery.
And this is pre-internet, so this is all going magazine focused.
Yeah.
The goal is covers of magazine, surfer, surfing, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing like, and back then as a surfer, you would wait for that magazine to come out every month. You couldn't get it on Instagram in 5 seconds and it's gone. It is
all the time.
You're waiting for that.
Yeah.
And if you get on that cover, you are,
Yeah.
I mean, it's big.
Or, you get in the article on that trip, like usually they would dedicate 10 to 12 pages of this article, of this trip to, the mag. And then we shot Surface of Fortune, which was a movie. We had Don King and Brian Blake, so two amazing cinematographers. So that movie was pretty amazing.
Did you get what came from that for you from that trip?
Yeah, it just kind of like tons of exposure, obviously. I mean, it was you're put there in the limelight with
proximity is power.
Yeah,
I say it all the time.
Yeah, but
you earn your way in, and I'm sure you got some. I mean, you must have photos from that like if you ever need to think about like, I was pretty good. Let me go look at those from those days, right?
Every now and again, I'll go look at those magazines and stuff. I gotta think about digitizing them because I didn't back in the day. I was like, whatever.
Yes,
my mom kept them, but I know I gotta put them on digital.
Do that.
But yeah, I mean, to be on the brand of the time, the trip of the brand's main key initiative, with that crew, Kelly and all those guys, it was just amazing.
Yeah,
I mean,
dude, wow,
it's hard.
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to go back. How do you top that, right? So.
Well, I mean, again, I grew up watching all that stuff, so I mean I remember the things you're talking about. I very much remember. Let me ask you this. Back to the Eddie. How many Eddies for you?
So I think in the 25th year of being invited, I gave myself my walking papers. I called Glenn Makaha from Quicksilver. And I said, dude, it's time. Give my spot up to one of these hot.
25 years?
Yeah.
You were invited?
Yeah. 18, I think I was like 40, early 40s. I think
I had no idea.
Yeah. I
That's
just
incredible.
said, you know what, I'm out. I hate seeing my name on there. I had moved down to the alternate list at that time, but I was like, give my spot to one of these crazy Maui kids, seriously, and, Glenn was like, okay, cool. We'll make an announcement at the thing. No, Glenn, listen, I won't show up. Like, I want to give my spot up, and it was good. It was time, And
so the Eddie doesn't run every year.
No.
It's really dependent on swell.
Yeah.
How many contests did you surf in during that 25 years?
So I surfed in 3. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's amazing. Only 3 ran, or you were on the alternate for some of those, but.
Okay. So while I was an invite, I ran, so it was basically 2.5. There was a half Eddie one year, but there was, and as an alternate, as you get further down the alternate list, the chances of you getting in are less. So it ran a few times while I was an alternate in my later years as I moved in, but it was fun,
25 years. I just want to give you huge praise. Like 25 years on the Eddie list until you asked to be I mean, it's just incredible that just says a lot about your ability and who you are in the surf world. So kudos to you. Super rad. How long did you continue to surf contests, or did it really pivot at that time when Quick mentioned to you, hey, focus on Hawaii and trips?
Yeah, I still always did the Triple Crown. I still always did select events to try and get enough points to make sure I was going to be in the Triple Crown. So a few different events here and there, just to strategic, but just to kind of keep my hand in, keep my points up, so that I could still get into the Pipe Masters and that kind of thing.
What was your best finish in the Triple Crown? You remember?
Shoot, Triple Crown. Got the Wipeout Award at Pipeline one year. Yeah,
I don't remember
Pipe Masters, but I made a few main events and stuff, but nothing stellar.
Got it.
Yeah.
Except that you were in it all the time. Let me ask you this. Favorite wave on Oahu outside of Makaha? I'm guessing Makaha's number 1?
For sure.
Outside of Makaha.
The home zone. Probably Pipeline.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's hard to beat
and there's probably a few that you can't talk about,
there's one or two of those too.
Which is very cool. Very cool. Real quick on the surf, and then we'll move on a little bit. Sponsorships. You started with Quick, but you didn't stay there forever.
Let's see. No, I did. I stayed there forever, and I guess this is a good segue to the next point. So, Quicksilver athlete, an opportunity came up in Hawaii to be the Billabong sales rep. And that's a once in a lifetime gig too.
Big time.
And, I'm going to stay with Quicksilver. This is my path. I'm going to work with Quicksilver on an international level, perhaps maybe help them with Japan. But my path was, after I'm done surfing for Quicksilver, I was going to move into the front office somehow.
And that was really the goal of most people in the surf world back then. Pro surfers went on to be industry folks.
Yeah.
Right?
And lucky, like I said, with my high school, high schooling, I think Danny and Bob had kind of recognized like, okay, this guy might be one of those people that we could, kind of move in. And I think that was definitely the goal here.
Thank you, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
that
exactly.
3-hour
now,
bus ride
on the
a
bus,
day.
like I did. Yeah. Now I look back at it, but at the time I was not stoked on that program. Yeah. But anyway, that opportunity to be the Billabong sales rep in Hawaii came up, and it was something that I didn't really know at the time was being offered to me, and I was, my initial reaction was, no, I'm staying with Quick, and who was offering it was Bob Hurley and Mike Lesher, his sales manager.
I know them both.
Yeah,
They're both two of my favorite guys.
Yeah. So then I talked to Danny about it, and I said, Danny, you wouldn't believe this. It's crazy, but here's what's happening. But, obviously I'm going to pass on that. And Danny goes, oh, no, you're taking that. I go, what? Danny goes, Keone, if you don't take this job, I'm going to fire you as an athlete. That's how big this thing is. And that's,
What a powerful mentor move for Danny to make.
I mean, for him to be selfish and keep me off the Billabong crew and keep me on the team and, it was amazing that he, was looking out for me, and he knew the value. He knew what was being offered at that time.
That's incredible.
And Danny said, no, you're going. And so it's like, wow, I guess I don't have an option. This is it, which turned out to be an amazing opportunity.
Well, let's talk real quick, because at that, so what years, this would have been?
This would have been like 96.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the 90s, the surf industry is still incredibly robust.
Yeah.
And the top two brands are what?
Billabong, Quicksilver.
That's it.
Yeah. Super healthy.
So you go from being an athlete on one, you've made your name, people know you, they've figured out that you're a pretty sharp kid with a good personality and the way the surf chops, and really connected. I mean, if anybody could look and go, here's all his mentors from Westside. And then they bring you into one of the two biggest brands in the world at a time when it's at its apex.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's another big honor. I mean, to have Bob and Mike do their homework enough on me, and not even being in that space yet. I mean, I was still, 100% athlete, not even sniffing that. I reckon I still had another 4 or 5 good years in me, so it was a little earlier than I wanted. And that was one thing that I was having a hard time, pulling out, but realizing, hey, if I don't take this, it's not going to be there. This is kind of a once in a lifetime job, So, made the move, and here I am in the surf industry.
That's incredible.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna press pause for a second, because we've got some big, the names that you're using are both from the surf and from the life-saving and the Hawaiian influence, and now from the industry side, are some of the biggest. When you talk about Danny Kwok is in your court, Bob Hurley is in your court. You said Mike Lesher, and I think a lot of people, unless you're in the surf world, you wouldn't know Mike, but Mike is this, I got to just tell this funny story. So Mike Lesher lived here in Corona del Mar. I met him through, I don't even recall whom, but he's classic, very, very sharp, very accomplished, but funny dude. And he used to grow palm trees, and a lot of us would buy palm trees from him in his house. But when he found out who I was with my industry, which is the hardware stores, he's like, Mark, before I was in surf, I was in the plumbing business. And he said my quote, and I've quoted him a zillion times, he goes, he used to sell toilets and toilet seats and everything, big, sales rep for toilets and such. And he goes, Mark, my mantra is, your shit is my bread and butter. Does that sound like Mike Lesher?
Totally. Absolutely. That's 100%.
I haven't talked to Mike in a while, but I want to reach out now as a result.
Yeah.
But you're talking, again, back to your Billabong opportunity to be a rep in Hawaii for one of the premier brands during the peak. What an incredible, but it also says a lot about what they thought of you, which is what you said, like that education and your abilities, et cetera. So
I was lucky. I mean, there was a long list of people that wanted that job,
for
as
sure.
you can imagine.
You earn your luck.
And this
right?
is the heyday, right? This is like, these brands are not competing with the likes of these, secondary markets, online, Amazon. I mean, this is a captive audience, and these brands are healthy and they're thriving, and it was just.
And in those days, that's all that we, as your more average surf kid, that's all we wore.
Yeah.
For a very long time, until the market changed and other brands would come along. But, those other brands were also Bob Hurley and Hurley.
Yeah.
So Billabong and Quick. Growing up here, Quick was based right here before Billabong, before Bob got involved. But it was right here down the street, and that's all we wanted to wear. And they had a little second store. We would go there. That's all we were wearing.
So cool.
That
was it.
We just wanted to be you.
Yeah.
We just wanted to be like you. That's it.
Quicksilver was it, you know? Yeah.
And so, listen, I thought we would go from surfing into paddling, but we're going to stay on career, and then we'll go back to your prone and outrigger because you're still doing all of that. So let's talk about, when did you think that, or did you ever think while you were, before that opportunity came to you, were you thinking were you kind of mapping out your path forward as a career in the surf world? Is that kind of where you thought you were going to go, or you wanted to go? Was
100%.
that the goal? Okay.
There was no question. I wanted to be in this industry in some capacity afterwards, you know. So I would kind of spend a little more time here, you know, there'd be, you know, the PSAA events or, you know, whatever I was doing, but I would hang on a little longer. I'd spend a little more time in the office with Danny, and I would kind of watch Bob and what he does. And, you know, I was definitely intent on making sure, like, hey, I'm going to be in this industry somehow. And, you know, hopefully with Quicksilver, but yeah, I would definitely map that out.
Well, my suspicion is if you had asked back in those days, if somebody came up to you or anybody else in your position on the, you know, in the pro surf world and said, hey, Keone, I have a magic wand and I can give you any job you want, you would say, I want to be a sales rep in Hawaii for Billabong Quicksilver. And so for you to get that, like, hallelujah.
Yeah.
So talk about it. What did that turn into? What did that look like for you?
Well, it was, you know, a little bit of a change, right? Used to people picking you up at airports and, you know, people doing all this stuff for you. And all of a sudden, hey, you're the guy. And funny, Mike's thing, like, I came over for my first sales meeting. I'm like, okay, yeah, I landed this time. And he's like, all right, well, get yourself a car and get down here. I was like, oh, so it's like that, huh? So it was funny. It was a bit of a transition, you know, being
bit of a golden child beforehand to working stiff.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but it was good. I had a lot to learn, you know, and you know, it was great because, you know, what I had is what you can't really teach. You know, this history and this knowledge of the industry and this and how it works. You know, so it was great where I had the attention of the shop kid on the floor. Now, did I know Excel? Did I know, you know, all this stuff? I learned later, you know, and I learned, you know, how to make it all work and the business side.
But you said, what you just said there was, I had the attention of the shop kid on the floor. That's because of who you were. You were known in the industry. And so when you walk in, they're like, hi, Mr. Watson.
I think what Mike and Bob had recognized is that, all right, you know, there's certain things that you can teach and things that you can't teach. Like, you know, you can't teach 7-0 to a center, right? Or you're either there or you're not. And so I think the intangibles they thought would come later. And, you know, I was just in the right place, right time, you know.
What do you think they saw in you that made you the right place at the right time? Because everybody was in the right place, or in that place at that time, and they picked you. What do you think you had that made you the pick?
Well, I think funny, Mike would tell this story when we were on the road together, and he said when in my interview process with him, you know, I told him growing up in Makaha, you learn respect before anything else. And Mike said, that's why I hired you. You know, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. That could be a lesson for any kid that's interviewing for their first job, right?
Yeah.
Still today, that holds. Yeah. And we had that conversation yesterday. Integrity is still the key to just about everything. Yeah. Or it certainly should be. Mm-hmm. And karma's a bitch sometimes if you don't, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This was our conversation from yesterday.
Yeah.
How long did you hold that role?
It's probably, let's see. So interesting, I was Billabong rep and left Quicksilver to be the Billabong rep. And at about like my fourth or fifth sales meeting, Bob Hurley goes, hey, we got some news. And we're like, oh, cool, lay it on us. Close all the doors. Everybody gets quiet. He goes, I'm not renewing my license with Billabong. And we're like, what? Like, how? What is he saying? How? You know, I'm asking the reps next to me, what did he say? What does this mean? You know, and it was like hard to comprehend. But
how many people would have been in the room for that?
Probably 14 or something.
Small
like
group.
That. Yeah.
So you were there for.
Well, okay. So you know what it was actually? It was just Mike Lesher in the room. Bob Hurley was driving away. He was driving from Gordon Merchant's house in Australia. And he said, guys, as we were talking, Bob Hurley is driving, from a meeting with Gordon Merchant, and he just
Gordon
informed
was
him.
whom?
Gordon Merchant, founder of Billabong,
Got
who he would license the name from, for the U.S. And he said he just told Gordon that he's not going to renew the license with Billabong. So Bob wasn't in the room, actually. It was just Mike, and he'd shared that info with us, and it was like, holy moly, this is heavy, And that was the start of Hurley. So he moved on, and he had, obviously, I guess with a licensee you have constraints and things you can and can't do. But Bob, being the creative guy he is, and having all the contacts and everything, I think for him it felt like it was better to go and start his own brand, which obviously did very well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, going back to Danny Kwok, you said was like very much of a mentor for you and really directed you to this. Bob is another one who one of my mantras is be like Bob, because when it comes to instilling positivity and engagement in team workers, like he walked me through and my kids through the Hurley campus at one point years ago, and everybody, I tell the story all the time, people, Bob, come over, see what we're doing. Hey, Bob. And Bob remembered everybody's names, what's going on in their lives, asked about their kids, and I just watched this. Like, I was just there with my kid, but he walked us through. I thought a secretary or somebody was going to walk us through. No, Bob just...
His success is no accident.
No accident.
And his personality, he makes everyone feel special.
Always.
He makes you feel like you're the only person in the room.
Yep, 100%.
It's amazing.
And so to go on and lead a company and put your own name on it.
Yeah.
Like to go, I've got this proven thing. Like, I think we don't take it for granted, but you're running one of the two biggest companies in the surf industry, and they're big at that time. Yeah. And to go, I'm not going to renew. I'm going to go put all my eggs in my own basket. I'm putting my name on the building, and we're going. Oh,
yeah.
You can't underestimate how huge of a move that was.
That was a big move. Yeah.
And it was very successful.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Yeah. So what did that mean for you?
Well, what it meant was I had a decision. So it was, at some point we knew Gordon would be back in the U.S. to reorganize and restructure. And, it was, Bob had the machine in place. He had the personnel, he had the program. And, Billabong had the name, but nothing behind it, So what ended up happening was Bob started to get reorganized, and, we were Hurley. And it was funny, there was this overlap where Bob was under contract to finish out his Billabong license, but he was, had to start, with Hurley. So there was this funny overlap, and it was like this one ASR. It's crazy. There's got to be a photo out there somewhere. But this booth was split down the middle, and there were two doors. There was Billabong and Hurley in the same booth. Like, it was amazing.
Can you imagine that meeting if you were flying on the wall with Gordon and Bob when Bob said, I'm not renewing, and Gordon's like in his head going, I'm going to have to rebuild from scratch in the U.S. I've got the name, I have all the systems, but I have to start over.
Yeah, right.
I'm guessing that was a pretty tough conversation.
Well, yeah, I imagine, but, they
Billabong got through it.
Yeah, they got through it. And, the pivot for Gordon Merchant was Paul Nadi. And it was interesting because I think Paul was kind of helping Gordon kind of get reorganized and kind of leading them, hey, this is what you need to do. This is...
Who was Paul at that time?
Paul was Paul, that's a whole nother podcast, but, from South Africa, photographer, editor, ran Zigzag magazine out of South Africa, was the merchandiser at Gotcha, Michael Thompson's right-hand man, I think the silent genius behind Gotcha, and pulled away from Gotcha when they got involved with kind of outside money and outside agenda and stuff. He pulled the plug on that because he didn't like the direction it was going. Started his own company called Land Breeze, and he was doing manufacturing for small companies like Realm, I think Ezekiel, all those smaller brands would come to Paul and go, here's our line plan. Can you make it for us? And he's like, I'll have it in your warehouse in 6 months' time. So that's what he did. He did manufacturing for all these small companies, So he was the guy. He
was the systems guy, and the structure guy.
Right. So he knew how to get things made. He knew where to build product. He knew how to market. He knew how to do this stuff. So I think people put Gordon in touch with Paul and like, hey, this is the guy you got to talk to, And I think that went on for quite a while until Gordon realized this is the guy that's got to head this up, So I know Paul didn't want any part of that. He had just come from Gotcha, and there was kind of a that thing went sideways when, like I said, outsiders got involved, And he's like, nah, I don't have the appetite for that. I'm just cool having my little business, surfing, shaping, glassing boards, and doing my business, But I think finally Gordon, obviously
brought him in
and made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Gotcha. And still some of the icons of the industry. But so back to you.
So then I had a decision,
Yeah.
right? So I go, wow, okay, Bob, we know his track record. We know what he's capable of. This is going to be amazing. And, just for me at the time, Hawaii was very slow to market. We were slow. There was no internet, no, Instagram, right? I mean, you were once a month, you got your magazine. Let's see who's, opening spread ad, who's second, and that was it. It took a long time for momentum to gain in Hawaii. And so I looked at what I did. I goes, well, I left Quicksilver to go to Billabong. That's probably the only brand I would have left Quicksilver for, the only arrangement I would have left for. So I just got kind of, I look at an upstart. I'm sure it's going to be good, but I've been building Billabong in Hawaii. I know there's going to have some challenges as they get reorganized, but I made the decision to stay with the brand, so leave Bob's crew, stay with the Billabong brand and start working with Paul Nadi and his crew.
You've worked with Paul for some time now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, quite a few years.
I'm jumping a giant gap, but just because we mentioned him and I asked some of the backstory, talk about what you're doing with him today.
So had a great run with Billabong, and then, like many of the brands, I guess 8-10 years ago, you're kind of getting outside money, you're going public, your feet are held to a different fire, you've got, investors now, and you're making decisions for the business and not for the brand. And Paul's like, hey, I've had enough of this. And Paul pulled the chute and started his own company called Visla. And I left Billabong to run with Paul.
Yeah. Still doing it.
Yeah,
amongst other things,
amongst other things, yeah.
Pretty incredible. So let's talk about the big shift. You were just mentioning it 8-10 years ago, all this outside capital came in and all the big brands. Do you want to talk just because I think it's super important, then we'll move on. This isn't so much about you, but you've been in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. Just talk about how the surf industry has changed, and then we'll talk about, like, the pendulum is always swinging, right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about who you're working with now. Some of that's probably a byproduct of that.
Yeah. It's interesting where you look at, like I was saying, the secondary markets, the Costco's, your direct-to-consumer channel. These have all challenged your independent retailer to be successful, and and have market share has been diced up and sliced up so much. So I think it was just kind of, surf was cool, and people wanted to be a part of it, and outside forces saw that, and they wanted to be a part of it too. So whether it was acquisitions or building their own brands to compete, or creating their own retail chain to compete, so we had an amazing run at that time where you didn't have all that.
Amazing for 20 years,
yeah,
probably, give or take. And
it just gotten a little harder, and we just have to work harder. We have to be more authentic. We have to be be more true to who we are and separate ourselves from those outside forces and outside brands and those other retail opportunities or entities that are out there. So the big heritage brands, they just started to be challenged, and some of them went the acquisition way, some of them went public, but it's just testament to the industry we built. Everybody wanted a part of it. Yeah. Everybody wanted to be it. But it just makes it harder for the surf shop owner, the sales rep that calls on them, to kind of have that same kind of success and have that same kind of top end.
And it happens everywhere, but in a small industry like surf, it really magnifies it because there was only so many big brands and they all got gobbled up. And then when you start, I think the crux of it, or to shine the magnifying light on it, is like when you can go into any mass merchant and find what used to be only in surf shops and they used to only be worn by surfers, but now you can go to, you know, you name it, it's going to be in a discounter, and all of a sudden it takes some of the gravitas away from it, right? Yeah. So you, as a result, I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, have pivoted a little bit. You're with this, but you're also with a bunch of other small brands doing some really cool stuff in surf. You want to talk about some of that?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the other brands I really love working for is FCS, you know, talking about fins, and, you know, with Vissla, we support the craftsman and the shaper, and so we talk about, you know, what he's doing, and then I can come in on the, you know, and talk about what fins, you know, he recommends, and, you know, talk signature fins with some of these shapers and help develop, you know, our fins and get them to market. And so it's just that's an amazing thing, and that's like, you know, I love that. It's the best part of my day. Well, talking surfboards.
That's got to be fun, right? When you're an elite surfer and that's your passion, and you're on the industry side, and you can get in between the shapers, and I mean, it's how fun. That sounds like a lot of fun, and you get to call it a job.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
That's the greatest part, you know. But in Hawaii, you know, we're a small market, right? You know, so now that alone is not going to pay the bills. So sometimes you have to, you know, so looking outside, and, you know, found myself in your store, and, you know, you support me with some of the stuff I do, and that's super fun just to kind of cast a bigger net, and I enjoy cooking, I enjoy building stuff, you know, and it's like shoot, I think I'd be in your store anyway. Your store here is amazing. I mean, no joke, right? I got landed, and within 2 hours I was in front of your store.
That's fun.
It was 11 p.m. It was closed, but I was definitely window shopping. I'm like, can't wait to get in here, you know. So
well, we've talked a lot about over the years that a lot of people that call on me in the hardware store industry came out of yours. I mean, action sports. So people that I know that have been surf their whole life have now picked up other lines as well. Maybe they're still have a foot in surf, but they've got into other outdoor related, or even into, there's been a big crossover. So my stores have, and fortunately for me, it makes it way more fun when we have really cool stuff. It's not just core hardware, but, you know, we can go on all the list of things that I have, and the names of people that used to be, again, pure outdoor retailer or surf that are now calling on my world. And so I've got people that we've known for decades from the surf industry in my office, which is just super fun for me, because surfing is a lot sexier than hardware stores, but we've been able to merge them. And so guys like you that are dabbling in different stuff or representing or working with, it's just really cool.
I don't know about that. I'm not sure, because my wife doesn't care about my surfing. Hey, hon, you know where I surfed today and all this stuff? She goes, I don't care, but the screen's broken and we got to replace the molding, you know? So if I can swing a hammer, I was like, wow, she's all into me, you know? Hey. So I'll tell you what, there's the guy, the handy guy, that means something in my home.
Our job is to support the handy guy in the
exactly.
home and provide those resources. That's what we do. So no, but that's been really fun over the years. And we've talked a lot about how a lot of that happened because of the pivot that you just explained. People are like, it's not working the same way as it used to. I can't rely solely on this. I got to pick up other stuff.
Yeah.
And who knew it? Like, there's a lot of crossover.
Right.
There hadn't been. There's a lot more now.
There is. Been really cool. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, you just talked about, I'm going to bring this, there's more career stuff, and we can bring it up, but I want to bring it back to the paddling side. Cool. Because the other thing we hadn't talked about, you talked a little bit about starting outrigger when you're 11 and steering, which is a big deal, but you've had a long life of still doing both outrigger and prone paddling. And anybody that knows me knows prone has been a big part of my life for a long time. And you're wearing a Joe Bark shirt. Yeah. 40 years of Joe Bark. Joe's one of my favorite humans and just an incredible craftsman. And so let's talk about, we'll get back to outrigger, but let's talk about prone.
Yeah.
Tell us when you got into prone, and then we can shine a light on some of what you've done in that world.
So funny enough, the guy that sat here a couple weeks ago, Mark Cunningham, 100% responsible for my love of paddleboarding.
Really?
Yeah. So, you know, I was working, I was 100% surf turkey, fishing, you know, that kind of thing. And Mark, he calls me and goes, what are you doing tomorrow? I go, I don't know, just kind of cruising. You know, he goes, paddleboard race, lifeguard paddleboard race tomorrow, let's go. I'm like, that sounds like fun. And he goes, yeah, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know, shoot. Okay, yeah, I'll go with you. I need a board though, I got to figure out a board. He goes, we'll find you a board, but come with me. So went with Mark, did the I think it was the summer solstice race. And that one was traditionally stock only, and it was from Sunset to Pipeline, put on by the lifeguards.
How far?
Rick
What's
Williams.
the distance of that?
That's about, I think it's about 2 miles. It's quick. It's a sprint. Yeah, it's like a sprint throw up kind of deal.
Yeah.
You know, and this was really cool because I did the race. Did all right, but afterwards I'm having watermelon and drinking water with Dennis Pang and Clark Abbey and Chris Owens and
some of the big underground guys.
Yes.
But like if you know them,
underground.
Most people don't know them in the surf world.
Yeah.
But if you're from Hawaii, you know these guys. And I only know them because of the paddling world. But like they're heavy watermen.
And I'm looking at my timing. I'm looking at my personal time clock, and I'm going, these guys are still surfing the bay. And these guys are 10, 15 years older than me, 20 maybe. And like, wow, Dennis Pang, these guys are still getting set waves at the bay. And like, this is how they're staying in shape. And you look at Mark, obviously, and Mark's a unit, right? And you go, wow, this is so cool. And then kind of got more into that, like, how do I go faster? And then I go, wow, this is good training for winter. And I was looking for, always looking for a way to stay in shape for the winter. And I just went in headlong. I mean, I was totally addicted.
How old were you about that time?
So it's probably like late 30s, maybe, something like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Like late
So
30s.
we're talking prone, which is the lay down paddling with your arms. There's a stockboard, you mentioned stock, which is 12 foot and 20 pounds. And unlimited is anything up, usually they're 17, 18 foot. And then so you get into it. Talk about what your goals were in that and what you ended up, some of the races that you went after.
Yeah, no goals initially. Like, didn't have, my knowledge was like this, and my exposure was like this. But I was just super into it. And, the next race was probably like the 4th of July race and like, wow, how do I go faster? I've done a few races, honestly, prior, but long time ago, George Downing, one of the best paddleboarders ever.
Yeah.
He was unbeatable at a time, but he gave me a paddleboard. I did a couple of Hawaii Kai races, didn't really stick. I was just like so, focused on surf, but it was cool. I had that exposure, and then the light bulb kind of went on all the stuff George used to tell me. Then kind of going back like, hey, Keone, I want to check out the back room, and the back room at the Downing shop is like, that's rare air. I mean, you can get back there. It's pretty amazing stuff back there. It's kind of looking, and then all the light bulbs went on like, wow. No way. This is amazing.
Boards everywhere.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's super cool. So then, going, wow, then realizing what made, George one of his, why he was so special, and the guy was seriously unbeatable for a time until, I think he came here and he did Catalina one year, but I think they kind of set him up, but that's another story. But
interesting.
Anyway, it was amazing just to, kind of get that, and, my old canoe paddling, just to scratch that competitive itch, because I hadn't been, surfing a whole lot, and it was like, this is kind of fun. I can compete, and keep in shape, and learn hydrodynamics, learn about board shapes and fins and all that, and just got super into it.
Well, the other thing about it is, not only are you training for something and being super fit and for big waves, because it's 100%. I mean, that's what it provides, right? You can sit further out and catch more waves. I mean, everybody that paddles prone benefits huge when it comes to surf. But the flip is that you came from this big wave background, and if you can steer a 6-man canoe, like you really understand how to ride the bumps and how to control stuff in the ocean, especially in Hawaii. And we'll talk a bit about the difference between paddling in California and paddling in Hawaii. I always say it's the equivalent of skiing. Groomers and moguls. Same sport, completely different application.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's 2 primary races in the world of prone paddling. Both are 32 miles. One is the Catalina Classic, end of August every year. It's been going on for 50 years. And it goes from the Isthmus to Manhattan Beach Pier. Relatively flat. You hope for no wind. It's like running a marathon flat. Ideally. It's never that way, but that's the dream. Molokai to Oahu, which is actually coming up next weekend, it's the end of July every year, which is considered the world championship. It's completely the same distance, 32 miles, big water, you're riding bumps, and the better you are at riding bumps, the faster you're gonna go, right? Mm-hmm. Completely different. There's only a few people that have won both of those races in the same year. One of those is you. That's incredible. I mean, that's rarefied. You said Rarefied Air was the back of their shop. Winning both of those, completely different, same craft, completely different bodies of water and how to paddle, and you won both. I don't know, it's 15 years ago or so.
Yeah.
Dude, that's incredible. Just huge.
Year.
Like, that's unbelievable. Because, listen, I trained really hard for a lot of years, and I raced really competitively, but I was always near the front of the chase pack, but I was never near the back of the elite pack. That's just, no matter what. But so for those of you that were always the front of the elite pack, it's incredible. So talk about racing prone and those channels.
Yeah, like anything, you get into something and you just like, well, what's next? How do I go faster? And how do I go farther? And then that competitive, itch needs to be scratched. And then, my whole competitive background comes in, like, well, wow, there's that Molokai race, man, I've heard about it and seen it, like, I want to do that, So first year I did a relay with my buddy, Craig Davidson, lifeguard on the west side. He's kind of Brian Keolana's protege, but we would partner up during Buffalo Keolana's event every year doing like mixed, whatever.
That's the Makaha event.
Makaha event, yeah, Buffalo's Makaha event. So we did a relay that year together, and then that was like, okay, I'm hooked. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go solo next year, and that's it, And so next year went solo, won it. Kind of funny, like little technicality. So there's a guy named Eric Meach.
Sure.
He
fastest turnover I've ever seen on somebody on a prone board.
Okay.
Arms, like a butterfly.
Really?
Like a hummingbird.
Okay. So he started a race unlimited and went a certain distance on unlimited, and for maybe it was equipment. I don't really know exactly what it was.
He switched?
But he switched to stock.
Really?
Yeah. And so he finished from like here to the the sign, the optometry store in front of me, and so I got to the beach and I was like, I got second. Wow, that was insane, and nobody was really talking to me, and there was like big scuttlebutt, and there's this big commotion with Mike Takahashi, one of the other Waimea hammers,
for sure,
that paddles
ageless
and stuff, ageless, Iron Mike,
yeah.
So big, conversations going on, and I'm kind of like, people are coming to me, goes, no, you won. I'm like, what are you talking about? So what they did was they assessed him a 2-minute penalty because he started in unlimited and finished on stock, So what that did was it moved me up, it moved him behind me. So I guess he got second, but to third and fourth to get kicked off the podium, it didn't sit right with the Hawaii boys.
No,
and that was
sure.
tough. And I know Mike had a tough decision. I think he had a lot of people in his face, and he was trying to do the right thing.
It sounds like a DQ to me. Right?
Okay, so fast forward. So anyway, I got first. Sounds like a DQ.
Done.
So that year, I was like, wow, that was really fun. And I go, I still want to paddle some more. And I go, I want to do Catalina because I've always looked at that race.
Which is 1 month later.
1 month later. So, and really, I'm just starting to learn about real athletes, and like how you would peak and how you would come down and how you would peak again, and you're looking at, oh, this guy's like Chad Carvin in this race. These are like Olympic athletes, and like, wow, this is, you get into Catalina, and you're more of a, there's less bump riding, right? There's less surf skills, right? So you see the surfing guys kind of fall down a little bit, and you'd see that with different conditions, where the surfers would do better in the big stuff.
It becomes much more endurance and grit.
Yeah.
Right.
So I wanted to do Catalina, and I just called Joe Bark out of the blue, like he didn't know me, and was like, hey, my name's Keone, I'm going to come race this year. Is there a board a secondhand board I could borrow, or do you know of one, I could wrangle? And, he goes, I got one for you. And I was like, oh, no way, cool. And we got to talking a little bit more that over the coming weeks, and he goes, hey, here's the deal. If you win, you can take the board home. And I was like, whoa, that's an incentive. So I'm like, okay. So anyway, I'm looking for an escort, and I'm on paddleboard.com. I think that was maybe it was Eaton.com.
Eaton was the one.
He had the
Eatonsurf.com.
Yeah, Eatonsurf.com. Okay, so that was the
Mike
the
Eaton's
chat room.
site.
Yeah, Mike
Rest
Eaton's
his soul,
site.
right?
Yeah, Mike. So Mike Eaton reaches out. He goes, hey, I can escort you. And I was like, wow.
icon, surf and paddle icon, board builder.
It's pretty
elite
cool.
guy.
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away, and I go, hey, Mike, before we go any further, full disclosure, I've committed to Joe Bark to paddle aboard in the race, and if that changes things, that's totally fine. Mike, obviously a master craftsman, amazing board builder in his own right, for sure. But I just wanted to get that clear. Like I already committed to Joe. I didn't want to, hop the fence back again. And he goes, oh, that's fine, Keone. That I totally get it.
So cool.
I need to go to Catalina because some things need to be said before this race starts. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, sounds good. So, okay, we're on then. I'm like, right, wow, I got a Joe Bark board. I've got a Mike Eaton escort, and I think Tarzan was on the boat with them, and I'm going, oh my gosh, this is the dream team. I got to produce here, So anyway, we go to the island, and I was like, I wonder what Mike was so fired up about. So he gets up at the pre-race meeting, and I think Joe's there cooking chicken. He's sweating, and everybody's getting into their mode, race mode. But hey, it was special, guest speaker and whatever. Mike wanted to say something. Mike, in no certain terms, he goes, if you take one stroke on a board that's not 20 pounds or 12 feet, you are in the unlimited division.
Whoa.
I don't care how many strokes you take on this board, but he wanted to make that, kind of apparent, So I think, it was cool to see Mike seeing what happened in Molokai, kind of,
And just reinforcing some of the core, because this race goes back to the kind of the Godfathers with the Greg Knowles and the Tom Blakes even before. Like it's really historic.
Well, see, that's what's so beautiful about this event. And, hey, maybe blasphemy on my point, being from Hawaii, the Molokai in my backyard, but the Catalina Classic is the most pure paddleboard race in the world, and I believe that is the true, world championships of our sport. It's pretty amazing. And the way Joe always said, there's no, oh, we got, relay, 3-man relay, 3-man stand-up relay. We got stand-up, we got, 40 to 50 division, we got this. There's 1 through 100. And the 17th place guy knows how he did. He got right behind 16th and right ahead of 18th, First and second stock, first and second unlimited get on the trophy. End of story, drink beer, we go home. And
That's
it's
it.
like, how beautiful is that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so
It's
pure,
very core.
it is so amazing.
I had a couple people recently asking me, because 14 foot, if you're new to the sport, 14 foot is one of it. You can do 12 foot, 14 foot, or unlimited. And they're like, what? When are they going to put 14 in? Why don't they put? I was like, it's never going to happen. It'll
Exactly.
never
Never
happen.
happen.
And
Nope.
because it's the history, it's the core history of it.
And I love that
So,
about it.
Yeah. So the Catalina Classic has a perpetual trophy with first and second from each class, as you just described, from each year. How many times are you on that?
I'm on 2 times.
Yeah, brother. I'm on it 0.
No, the first
so
year
awesome.
I came over and, it was like, I think as we got out of the harbor, I started looking and I'm like, what did I just sign up for? I kept waiting for the bumps to come up, like, hey, but that was kind of a snotty year. I don't know if you remember that year was kind of, I think it was 2008. It was kind of icky. And usually, like, if it's windy at the beginning, it's glassy at the end. And if it's glassy in the beginning, it's icky at the end, right? It was one of those years.
My first year was icky.
Oh, yeah.
Ickier.
Like the race from hell.
Yeah, that was my
your
first year? On that board that you saw the other day.
And you continued paddling after that?
But we had we had a third of the field not finished that year. It was terrible.
Jeez. You got to speak to that at some point. I mean, that's a rad accomplishment.
But you saw the board.
Oh,
the boards were different at those times.
That's even harder.
But to be on that trophy, buddy, is just so rad. So congrats. On both races, to win both races the same year with the totally different conditions that we just talked about is, like, again, rarefied air. There's only a few people. I think there's 3 of you that have done that. So
oh, wow.
Big kudos.
Yeah.
Big.
That was very cool.
And then
big
early
honor.
on, you had mentioned we're looking at some of the results, and I think it was that second year when you got second, the name right ahead of you was me.
Yeah.
But I was on an unlimited and you were on a stock. So it's not a fair, like you got second in your class, and I think I got that year, like 14th or something in mine. So, but it was just funny that I was like, oh, look, our names are right there. So pretty cool.
So that year I got second. I was, I think there was Brian Zemansky won, paddled his own board.
Incredible.
Absolute amazing
Monster
athlete.
out of San Diego.
Guy on third place was on an Ohana board. So I was on the podium with Joe's board, and Joe goes, hey, you didn't win, but I got on the podium, close enough, take the board home. So that was super cool, and that kind of started this long relationship with Mr. Joe Bark.
That family's incredible. We love Joe and the whole family. They're amazing. Let's talk about, so kudos on all your pros. It's amazing. let's talk about outrigger. I think you're still doing a lot of stuff, but talk about what outrigger world has been for you.
Yeah, I guess so. Competed. And I wouldn't say I've done that with prone. But just kind of, I think, I just kind of took a couple of years off. And then I kind of was hanging out with my good friend Jim Beaton, who's the outrigger open men's coach. And we were going to Molokai for I think we were escorting somebody, or I think I was going to jump on Mark Roslow's escort boat and escort him back. But we were riding over and we were talking, and he's like, oh, yeah, we're going to have, open, we start up pretty soon here. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm in the channel again. We're going over there and we're just getting our ass kicked.
On the way there, yeah.
He's getting pounded. I'm like, God, I miss this channel, And then I go, when did you guys say you start up again? He started laughing. He's like, yeah, right. Like, you're going to come out. I'm like, no, I might come out. That might be kind of fun, And I go, shoot, I'm an outrigger member, and they make it so easy for you to paddle for outrigger, I would lose my ghetto card with the boys back home in Makaha, but it's my backyard. I live by the outrigger. So yeah, I ended up coming out and, had a good time, first couple times and it was just amazing. It kind of got back to my roots with, paddling as a little kid on the west side, so that was fun. That was super fun.
Were you steering?
Not initially. I was kind of backup steersman. I think my first Molokai year, we paddled Leilani, which is one of Outrigger's koa canoes. And I think I came in as like a backup steersman for a bit. But I think the year after, or maybe 2 years after, I became kind of the second crew steersman. And that was super fun.
You still doing it?
No, it took a couple of years off. Yeah, so I'm not doing it
But
anymore.
see, that's the beauty of, I think, outrigger almost more than most. You can keep surfing big waves. You can surf for as long as your body lets you. But like outrigger, like you said, your parents are still racing.
Yeah.
And I was just in Kauai, and like there's all the age groups. But my neighbor Peter is 80, and he's still paddling. More of the club season, but he's paddling 3 days a week. Like. I
just called my mom on Saturday. How'd you go? It was their final race of the season. How'd you go? She goes, I had the hard kahi right before, so we didn't hit the flag, and she wasn't steering. She steered her second race, and they did okay. But it was just so cool to talk to my folks about it. But yeah, the boats that Outrigger has, amazing. The sit in a koa canoe that was worked on by Leilani, built in 1930, but Sonny Bradley worked on it. George Downing worked on it. It was let's see. Oh, Quigg. So
Joe
we
Quigg,
had Joe Quigg. So Joe Quigg, Sonny Bradley, George Downing all had a hand in building and refining and repairing Leilani, and to sit in that boat and steer it is just insane.
See, I think that's, and we could do a whole podcast on that, and we can't today, but to talk about the history of outrigger paddling and the influence and the fact that you're still paddling those boats that were touched by some of the icons and the grandmothers and grandfathers of the sport. Like when you're sitting in seat 6 and how many of those butts were in that seat, like it's got to be incredible. So how fun.
Yeah.
We're coming towards the end. Just a couple questions. Like, so you've done a lot of channel crossings. Tell me what you feel about when you said what does it feel like? Like what is it about crossing a channel under human power for you?
Yeah, I think it's like a rhythm, like maybe it's learning the character of the channel that day, and then trying to crack the code. It's kind of like the Matrix. There's all these numbers ahead of you, and then all of a sudden, boom, it goes clear, and you can find the cadence of the swell. Because I'm all about swell. If it's completely flat, that's hard for me. My mind wanders and stuff. But if there's a little bump to pick out, and finding the personality of the channel that day, whether it's Molokai or Catalina, and learning, how to maximize, what it's giving you that day. That's kind of where my focus is, and trying to figure out how you work it to your, benefits.
Yeah. Well, that's super interesting because I've learned I've done the Catalina channel quite a few times and I understand it reasonably well, but I've done Molokai 3 times, all as team, 2-man team. It's got my number. I do not have it. I never figured it. I haven't spent enough time in it, but it never, like I got my ass handed to me every single time. Yeah. I just never cracked the code. I just wasn't there long enough. Yeah, I have a lot.
You're there on so many disciplines, though. Like, how do you start your day? Like, how do you decide what discipline? I mean, because you go into prone, then I know surf ski's your passion, yeah, right? Or at this point, you know.
My body likes it more.
But I know you've jumped in with like MP and the Louis and done Catalina with those guys. They said you're a hammer.
I got lucky. I got the call up. It was right after. It was like a month or a few weeks after the Catalina Classic, and I got the call up, and I'm like. We're talking 9-man race from Catalina to Newport, and I'm like, you guys, every outrigger paddler in the world is here for this. Like, the last person you want in the boat is me. Somebody gotten hurt, and they're like, I'm like, find somebody else. And then they call me up the next day, and they're like, hey, shoot. And I was driving the boat for them. They're like, you're in the boat, and I was like, I haven't paddled outrigger, and I had never done a change. A 9-man. I had never in my life jumped in a boat. So it was an amazing experience to paddle with them. And
as an athlete and what you do.
It's just anything in the water is my happy place. But listen, let me just ask you a couple questions. I wanted to go into basketball. I don't think we have time, but I know that you're opinionated. You had talked about it. Your dad was a coach, and you're pretty passionate about it. But I've seen some funny things where you're like, who's your favorite team?
Well, Celtics. You know, my dad was a big Celtics fan, so I kind of grew up in that house.
You and my son Gianni would be happy to talk together.
But my dad went to Kansas University, so I'm a big Jayhawk fan.
Got it.
Yeah,
got it. I've seen some funny posts. Of all the, I don't know if you can think of this one off the top of your head. Of all the accomplishments, whether it be surf, paddling, industry, is there one that stands out? Like, do you have one accomplishment you're like, oof, that barrel I got at X, or that wave I got at Waimea, or that Molokai win? Any of those like better than another one, or have more meaning, or the 25 invitations to the Eddy? Holy schmoly, that's got to be it.
I think the sitting out there in that circle every year at the ICAO event, that was a special. I mean, every year I go, wow, I get to sit up with these people and these surfers, and every year that was probably the highlight of my year. And then I think winning Molokai the second time, that was kind of special.
How many times have you done the Molokai?
Probably like maybe 5 or 6.
So great. Yeah, congratulations again.
But the winning Catalina with the sticker of Gibby Gibson on my
Gibby
board.
Had passed. He was one of the refounders of the Classic.
It was dedicated to him that year. But that was, there's no bump to ride, so it was like looking at Gibby for inspiration that day. But yeah, that was probably the highlight too, is coming over. So that was a real special day for me.
Those are huge accomplishments. Congratulations. Is there anything left on your bucket list from athletics or anything?
I don't know. Geez. I was trying to get one season where me, my son, and my dad were all paddling regatta season one year. So I could, that's a long day though, going from the little kids to, whatever.
So you could be in the boat with each of them?
Well, no, but they would have their own races, so my son would have his,
So whatever. 3 generations racing the same day.
Yeah. So then that's how the regatta works in Hawaii is, you do it for, the whole family can race, you got 70s, you got, open, you got like kids, so I think that'd be pretty cool, is to have a day where I'm watching, I'm competing in one race, and then my son and my dad, my mom are in the other race. Or hey, my wife's Eliza, she's a hammer in her own right. I think she's threatening to paddle next year.
Oh, so, yeah. We heard it here. You heard it here, Eliza. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. Super, super cool. Keone, I could go all day because this stuff is so intriguing to me. Let me just say this. As I said, maybe at the beginning, I just love. It goes back to my mantra that you never know who's in the room. I say it a lot on here. I say it with my kids. You never know who you're sitting next to. You're one of those guys. Nobody. If somebody walked up to you, they wouldn't know anything about what you've accomplished because you have no ego about it. You're not wearing it on your sleeve. You're not. You're just the nicest, most normal guy, but you have incredible accomplishments, and I just think that that's why everybody seems to like you, because you have such a great reputation out there. And maybe I'll close it with a little quote that I read from a buddy of yours. And this is just something I snapped, but this is your buddy Ross Williams. So this was a quote from about 1.5 years ago. Do you know which one?
I don't.
All right, it's just super nice. So it goes, "My buddy Keoni Watson. It's such a privilege to have great people in your life. I've always looked up to Keone for inspiration. He is a good family man, an awesome friend to anyone who knows him. He has super funny sense of humor. He is always putting out positive vibes. Bags, I don't know that nickname, but Bags is wicked smart, great at his job, but even more passionate about hobbies. He's just a freaking awesome human, and it was so nice to surf with him once again yesterday, just like we did 40 years ago.
Wow.
And Ross Williams is another icon in the sport and just a rad Hawaiian guy. But like that, I think says a lot. He put that on his post, and it's just,
how'd you find that? That's
I don't
amazing.
know. I was looking stuff up. I'm doing my homework.
Wow.
So
That's funny. I mentioned him. He is one of my very best friends, and wow, very nice.
Super cool.
Very
so
nice.
Keone Watson, I could go all day. I have so many more questions, but for today, this is it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Dude.
Thanks for being an amazing host, and looking forward to hanging out more.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
Okay, aloha.
Aloha.